And I guess I just want to start by saying thank you all so much for joining us today for our live stream Q&A with our incredible music director, Sir Dirk Brossé. My name is Josh Hartman. I'm the marketing director for the Chamber Orchestra of Philadelphia. And we are so glad that we can meet virtually today, since our scheduled performance of Tchaikovsky and Beethoven sadly had to be canceled. While it's certainly no replacement for live orchestral music, we hope that you can find at least some musical and artistic fulfillment from our discussion. We are very much looking forward to our new season in the fall, and if you haven't yet had a chance to subscribe, you can find all of those great programs listed on our website. While we know there is some uncertainty with live performance right now, we are supremely confident that we will be bringing you classical music in whatever form it needs to take. But of course, even without a pandemic upending our season, the Chamber Orchestra depends on charitable donations to present our brilliant musicians. This spring, we are relying on your goodwill more than ever to ensure our continuity beyond COVID-19. So please consider making a gift of any size by clicking on the link in the description below the video, or just by visiting chamberorchestra.org. And so from there, we can welcome our music director, Dirk Brossé.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Well, it's evening in Europe now. It's 10 o'clock in the evening, so you still have sunshine in Philadelphia. Hello, everybody.
It's a little cloudy today, but I think we do have it.
We had a brilliant day. It was very hot, really. We had a great day.
Excellent. Well, I hope everyone grabbed their Belgian drinks. I'm starting off with, of course, the wonderful Delirium. Since every time I'm anywhere near a Belgian bar, I have Maestro Dirk here asking me if I know Delirium Tremens, and saw it in the store today, and of course, had to get it. So, Dirk, what are you drinking for us today?
I'll tell you what I have. I had quite a bit of alcohol today, visiting some neighbors. So I stick to non-alcoholic drinks tonight. It's a ginger-based liqueur. Is really, really great, and you just have to put some sparkling water in it, and it tastes like a gin, tastes like a cocktail, but it has no alcohol. So cheers. Yeah.
Got all your fun done earlier. Well, I'll drink for you as well.
Wonderful.
Well then, I mean, I think we can get started with the simple and easy questions going thus far. How are you doing in quarantine? I mean, we presume Europe looks very much like us right now. All the concert halls are closed. No one's allowed to have concerts. You're not really allowed to go too far or get into big public spaces.
Well, we just start to opening again. I mean, life starts again. The restaurants and the bars are still closed, but the shops are open, so people are allowed to go on the street, to have a walk in the park. It's been literally exactly today 2 months that we've been in quarantine, and I remember the Belgian TV, they announced that there was a problem with the COVID-19, with the corona, that we should stay at home. But I still had a recording planned on March 17th. So I was like in a very difficult situation. Should I do the recording? Should I not do the recording? But I did the recording. And I got some very, very naughty emails from friends of mine that said, you should not do this, and et cetera, et cetera. But then the day after, when I was watching the news, we really saw that something very serious was going on. And from that day onwards, we canceled all activities, recordings, teaching, conducting. But I had a lot of free time to write music, to write new music. I never had so much time to focus on composition. So since the last 2 months, I've been writing a new concerto for clarinet and orchestra. So this year in my city, the city of Ghent, we are celebrating the painter Van Eyck, Jan Van Eyck, who painted a wonderful painting, The Mystic Lamp. It was painted in 1432, and we had a huge exposition. So I was inspired by the lights in the painting. I grew up with this painting. I mean, I've seen it since I was 10 years old, and once in a while, it's still in the cathedral, in the St. Bavo Cathedral in my city. So once in a while, I still go and visit it. So that inspired me to write a new clarinet concerto. Then I wrote a music for for an animated short film of a friend of mine. It's a story about two opera singers who got into a car crash, and unfortunately, the singer dies, and the singer, so the husband dies, and the lady stays by herself, and it's a whole story about how you deal with mourning when your husband dies. So this has been done, and then I'm working on two piano albums under the umbrella and under the title Guilty Pleasures.
Oh my. Will they involve cheesecake?
Well, guilty pleasures. As a composer, I have a lot of commissions, and when you have a commission, you always write for a certain purpose, whether it is for a concert hall or for a specific soloist who's asking to write a concerto based on a specific subject. But now I have no commission, no pressure involved. It's just the music that I feel at the moment, the music that I feel I have to write, and I'm very pleased. So my idea is to write two albums for piano music. One album is finished, and I'm working on the second one as I speak.
Wow. That's certainly a lot more productive than a lot of people have been. Netflix is just such a big draw and pull. So you would say then that the quarantine has been pretty good for your creativity?
Well, I mean, it's a bit sarcastic to say that because we're all suffering, and I'm supporting all the musicians that have no job because performing arts, they want to play, and I want to address myself also to our wonderful musicians that I'm really behind them, and I'm really in my spirit and my thoughts with them. Then I hope that COVID-19 will disappear as soon as possible. But I'm afraid it will take another couple of weeks, months. We'll see. But I think the performing artists, we all have hard times, tough times, and the only thing we want to do is to perform. So that's what we're all aiming to do in the next few days, weeks, months, as soon as
possible, definitely. And we have high hopes that it will be good for us come fall, and even if not come fall, it will be come winter or come spring. It will happen again. And we're behind the scenes. We're working on a lot of different ideas about how, no matter what happens, we still can get our musicians together. Somehow we can bring music to people in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and it's a time for introspection. It's also a time maybe to reinvent ourselves, to think about what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing. Of course, because of the love of music, but I think it's a good time to overview the musical world, and some good things will come out of it. I'm sure that in situations like this, and we had in human history, we had similar situations. We had the Spanish flu 100 years ago, but we also had, unfortunately, the world wars and World War I, World War II. So I think the human beings, we are very strong, and we always are capable to adapt ourselves and to find solutions for those problems. So I see here and there people coming with new ideas that we would never have thought of before the corona came on this planet. So I think it will lead to new ways of explore music in new ways of presenting music to the concert stage, and it will. Let's hope it will be positive for the creativity of creative artists.
Yeah, I hope so and think so. Speaking of our musicians, because we did get a bunch of questions in, and one of my favorite questions we got was from our dear Martha Hitchens, timpani player, who many of you have seen on stage. You also may know she has a fondness for animals, and she's desperate to know if you and Claire have gotten a dog.
Not yet. Well, dear Martha, if you are listening, thank you for asking so much. But we are preparing the garden in having a dog pretty soon. So we have a big garden, and so we have to be sure that once we have the dog, that he's not running away from our property. But we will have the dog, definitely. That's promised.
Excellent. Well, good. I mean, garden is at least, somewhat like a pet. They don't complain as much, I think. That's handy. But good. Well, I'm glad. We're all glad to see that you're doing well, and I think we're excited to learn some more about Beethoven's Symphony Number 8, which we would be listening to, or just be finishing listening to right now if we weren't all stuck in our homes. But so I guess we'll give the next best thing we can is to get into your head about it. So just starting off, what are your first impressions and history with the symphony? How do you feel it comparing with the seventh and the ninth and the fifth and the third? We hear these all the time, but the eighth doesn't always get done.
It's a bit, yeah, I think the Eighth Symphony, it's a little bit in the shadow of all the other symphonies. And sometimes we say that the strong symphonies are the 1, the 3, the 5, the 7, and the ninth. And then the 2s and the 4 and the 6 and the 8 are the weaker symphonies, which is, of course, not true. I mean, it's all great music. But there is something. 1, 3, and 5, they have something that 4, 2 and 4 don't have, and 7, especially 7. And why 7? Why it's so interesting? Because when Beethoven was composing his Seventh Symphony, he paired it with the Eighth Symphony. So he wrote it together in 1812, 1813, in a very difficult time in his life. It was the increasing problem of the deafness. So he really had problems hearing what he was writing. Well, he was hearing inside what he was writing. But I mean, when he was performing the premieres of his symphonies, I think he had very difficult times to hear, which is a disaster for a composer. And what is interesting is that the Eighth Symphony tend to be lighter than the Seventh. But I think this is not true. I think under the skin, there is a lot of drama. So it's a combination of drama, of comedy and tragedy. I think there is, under the comedy, there are very, very nice, funny, cheerful, playful episodes, and especially in the second and in the third movement. But in the first and especially in the fourth movement, there is a lot of drama going on, and it is literally directly translated from the situation he was in the years 1812, 1813, 1814.
Right. The other thing that people regularly say about this symphony, aside from calling it kind of lighter, is that they find a lot of connections to Haydn. And Haydn and Beethoven knew each other to a degree, right? I mean, I think Beethoven studied with Haydn, didn't he?
Right, yeah. But there was a connection, and you may say that in all the symphonies, I think in the eighth one, it's like a little bit neoclassical. You know, he goes back to the classical period in concept and in developing his musical themes, the treatment of the instrumentation, and for example, the symmetry in the melodies. We all know that in classical music, a lot of phrases consist of 8 bars. You have like a 4 bars question, and then you have 4 bars the answer. This is a typical architectural structure of a melody in the classical period. When we hear Beethoven's symphonies and when we analyze his themes, very often he's using just a small theme, like the Fifth Symphony, pa 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 pam, and that's it. Ta, 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 and then he starts building already. So in this period, we might say that he's going back to the idea of Haydn. But I have the score in front of me. So what is also quite shocking, that there is no introduction in the Eighth Symphony. He starts immediately with the principal theme. In most of his symphonies, there is an introduction, some chords, some melodies, some statements, some orchestration issues that he wants to start with. But here immediately he starts directly with a melody. For example, he gives the opening as in a classical symphony, and then you would expect an answer of 4 bars, but he gives an answer of 8 bars. So there is already Beethoven, you know. But there are little things also in instrumentation, the doubling of the woodwinds, the treatment of the trumpets and the horns that are close to the idea of the classical composers. It's only and also for the instrumentation, he goes back to the Haydn instrumentation. instrumentation. Although in the Fifth Symphony, he's already using three trombones and one piccolo in the last movement of the Fifth Symphony, but he just leaves it as it is. He goes back to the very classical instrumentation: eight woodwinds, two trumpets, two horns, three timpani. Then again, I have to address myself to Martha, because in the last movement, the timpani player by Beethoven had no time to retune his timpani into an FF octave. So today we want to play it. We really need three timpani. What is also strange about the symphony, it has no dedication. So most of the music is dedicated or commissioned by somebody, but this has no dedication. Just another thing I want to bring up, that as I told you, it's written in very turbulent and a critical time in Beethoven's at the end of the second period, beginning of the third period in his life, which was really catastrophic. But I just want to read a short excerpt of the immortal beloved love letters. So he was tortured to death because of an unanswered love affair. And let me just read two very short quotes from this wonderful, painful, unanswered, immortal, beloved love letter. We shall probably soon meet. Even today, I cannot communicate my remarks to you, which during these days I made about my life. Were our hearts close together, I should probably not make any such remarks. My bosom is fully to tell you much. There are moments when I found that speech is nothing at all. Brightening up, remain my true and only treasure, my all, as I to you. The rest the gods must send, what must be for us and shall. Your faithful Ludwig, Monday evening, 6th of July. And then he finishes the next day his love letter with the beautiful lines. Dear angel, be calm, love me today and yesterday. What longing in tears for you. You, my life, my all, farewell. Go on loving me, never doubt the faithfulness heart of your beloved Ludwig. Ever thine, ever mine, ever ours. Oh my God, I get tears in my eyes. Beautiful.
Wow.
So that was a situation he was in, the mood he was in when he was writing this symphony. So actually, it's as we said before, it's very charming a la Beethoven. It's full of optimism. If I look at the score, full of optimism, playfulness. It's brilliant melodies, great invention, great humor. The rhythmical energy is enormous. The structural creativity in some of the codas, we'll talk about it later on, is just genius. There's a lot of innovation in key changes and surprises. We'll talk about it later in the fourth movement, where there is really a shocking moment. So there were also a lot of original experimental orchestrations going on. But under the surface of these so-called happy music, there is happy music and musical jokes and innovations, and his references to Haydn and Mozart. There is always very serious music. There is always Beethoven. There is always drama. There is always passion. And maybe we should have a closer view to the first movement. As I told you already, what surprises me is that he starts immediately with a principal theme, which he never did before. So there are no intro, no chords. He immediately goes into the principal theme. And in classical music, the second theme very often is presented in the dominant key. But here he surprises the ears of the listeners, and instead of going to the dominant, he goes to the key of D. So he goes from F major to D major, which is absolutely, in those days, that was not supposed to be done. And the development, it's a marvelous development. It's only based on the first measure. And we know from the Fifth Symphony that Beethoven can create a development of 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes of beautiful music going on, built on only, in the case of the Fifth Symphony, two sounds. Ta 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 ta, pa 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 pa. It goes on, goes on, goes on. And no one else could make developments like him. And this is something he learned from his teacher, Haydn. Haydn was a master in the development, in composing the developments. But also in the development, for example, he's using the jumping violas. It's a loop. It's almost minimal music where he puts something in a loop and it goes on and it goes on forever. And then between the very subtle melodies, all of a sudden he's throwing in gigantic fortissimo walls of big sound, as no one else has done this before. And then what is genius about this development? Normally we have the supreme moment in the development, but he's keeping the most dramatic phrases in the recapitulation. So normally the recapitulation, it's a relief. We are losing all the tension that was built up in the development. But here he goes on, and the development goes on at the highest point where we have a lot of energy in the first eight bars of the recapitulation, where he's asking the musicians to play triple forte. So triple forte, fortissimo, which means that it's extremely loud. And it's very rare that a triple forte appears in Beethoven's work. So I suggest that we probably listen to the beginning of the development, which in my score it's bar 105. So we will hear the energy of the jumping violas, and then the melody comes in from the bassoon, and the bassoon hands it over to the clarinet, and the clarinet hands it over to the hobo and to the flute. Easy, happy life. And all of a sudden, there is a bombardment of sounds. All of a sudden, there is like a disruption. There is like a sound explosion of 4 bars that tend to destroy the good feeling. And then going back, promising again to the public, no, excuse me for this explosion. We go back to the very nice development episode. And then again, he goes back to the jumping violas. And again, he's building in a conversation coming from the bassoon, handing it over to the clarinet. And by the way, handing over the melody from one instrument to the other, it's something that Schoenberg and Webern did 100 years later, the Klangfarben melody. So it's a melody that's jumping from one instrument to the other. And then again, the explosion comes, and it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. And then at bar 144, there is a big crescendo, a never-ending big crescendo. It's fortissimo, and then the woodwinds are coming in, and then the theme is in the basses, and then it's increasing, the sound is increasing, and then there is the explosion at the recapitulation, where everybody is playing triple forte, very loud, and poor melody, because it seems like the melody is buried in the very deep voices. It's buried under the sound explosions coming from the woodwinds and the brass and the timpani. Poor cello, poor double basses, poor a bassoon. They have to try to play the principal theme, but against a wall of sound, and they actually don't succeed. So, and this is not funny at all. This is drama. There are 3 groups in the orchestra that want to play the most relieved moment in a classical symphony. It's a recapitulation. And they are buried under tons of sounds, tons of tremolos by the violins and the violas. I think this means a lot.
Yeah, well, why don't we have a little clip here with the score, and we can just take a listen right through. We're going to start right at the beginning of the development that we just started describing, and it's going to take us right through to that moment where we have this wall of sound, and then the principal theme from the very first bar of the piece comes in low in the bassoon and in the cello.
Yeah. Hi.
Well, yeah, certainly not what I would call a light, funny symphony there. No.
Oh my God! No, no, no! This is real. This is real drama. That's what I said before. I think for me the light movements are 2 and 3, and the heavy drama, tragedy, comedy. It's the first and the last movement. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we can move on to another movement. I had one little thing that I remember, that something, as we're trying to look to see, people do say that this sounds kind of like a Haydn symphony. And although we're kind of proving that it's not exactly a light or joyful symphony when you really get down to it, there are some really interesting Haydn-esque features that we find. And I think that's most striking in the first movement here. We don't have a clip for it, but that the first bars of the symphony and the last bars of the symphony are almost identical, except the last bars of the symphony are very quiet, and they end so abruptly, I can't help but think of Haydn's The Joke. Dun, 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 dun.
And that's it. Yeah.
And we're done. It's like, okay, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good Haydn thing that he did there. He learned well from his teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, the first movement is exciting. Now the second movement also brings us some really interesting Haydn-like ideas, and also some ideas that he was very fond of the metronome.
Exactly. So that was about the time that his good friend Johann Nepomuk Melzel, the inventor of the metronome, a device, by the way, that Beethoven tend to like a lot, because for the first time in music history, a composer could define exactly the tempo in which he wanted the piece of music to be performed. So that was a huge, fantastic invention to precise the tempo of a particular piece by a particular composer. If we listen to the opening bars, it sounds a little bit like a metronome. You know, you hear the woodwinds playing pom 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 pom. So it reminds on the metronome like parody. But other people say that maybe it was inspired by Joseph Haydn's Symphony Number 101, The Clock. So who will tell? But for me, this movement, which is again not a musical joke, maybe the idea starts off with a joke, with the imitation of the metronome. But there is a lot of things going on, and for me this is very refined music. And for me this is the most Haydn-esque movement of the Eighth Symphony, because of the elegant melodies, the classical harmony. Here we have the symmetric symmetric architecture. Of course, we have the extreme dynamics. This is where Beethoven appears again. And what is again? I mean, it starts up with a very nice melody in a pianissimo, and all of a sudden, he's throwing in fortissimo. But this is Beethoven. It's in the key of a B flat major, which is actually the subdominant of F. So there is a relationship with the two tonalities, and it's written in a sonata form. So it can't be more classical than that, because the symphony has no real slow movement. So this is supposed to be the slow movement, but actually it's quite fast. There is also no development section, so he starts with the themes, and that's it. He takes via a simple modulation. He goes back to the recapitulation in the key of B flat. So maybe we should listen to the beginning and pay attention to three things: to the metronome-like parody, whether it was meant to be for his teacher's clock symphony or his friend's new invention, the metronome. Also pay attention to the symmetrical buildup of the melodies, the inner conversation between the high strings and the lower strings. And then, of course, as Beethoven always does, surprises us with a big triple forte, double forte hit.
All right, we'll get the opening here. The first 15 bars, I think. It'll give us the mood for this classical extravaganza. Certainly very classical in its sound.
Very classical, very nice, very elegant, very sophisticated. Yeah, light, but again, drama at the same time. The third movement, very interesting. The third movement, I think the principal theme here also has a hidden feel, except for the opening bars. Because first of all, it's very, very, very strange that he's not writing a scherzo, because in most of his symphonies there is scherzo, which is also in a 3/4, but very, very fast. But here he returns to the classical tempo diminuendo. And for one beat, from now on, he can tell us exactly how fast he wants. It's a 126 for a beat, which is for tempo diminuendo quite fast, actually. But if you look at the opening bars, there are false downbeats. So it starts on a third beat. So you go on tado 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 pam pam. So you're a little bit lost, tempo diminuendo, but you are a little bit lost. But then we found back the groove of the tempo. So there, the opening bars apart, when we start from bar 3 onwards, there is a classical form of presenting the material. But my favorite episode in the entire third movement, it's the trio. It's the trio because many reasons. First of all, because of the use of the solo instruments. So it's a very lyrical section, and it contains actually two kind of naked solos, difficult solos. First of all, the first part of the theme is presented by the two horns, and then it goes to the clarinet. And also new for Beethoven, and for the instrument is that Beethoven is extending the range of the clarinet. For the very first time, he writes a high G for the clarinet. I believe it's in bar 63-ish. Yeah, it's later on. So this is the very first time in all his works that he's writing a high G, a high printed G for the clarinet. So it's a very, very important clarinet. And actually, Igor Stravinsky, very modern composer, he praised actually that part of the symphony as well because of the incomparable instrumental idea. And actually, the idea is quite modern. If I would translate it to modern music, what I see here with my eyes, it's a bass, a walking bass, a sophisticated classical, but a walking bass. Then I see a variation on that bass melody that also marks the harmony. A variation in the celli that are playing a groove coming from the triplets. So this is really a groove. And then that's all. No harmonies, no instruments that are coloring the harmony with long notes or whatever. We just hear the two horns, and then we hear the clarinet. And this is also an example of the Klangfarben, Klangfarben melody, which was used later on by Webern and by Schoenberg. So this is a pre-Klangfarben melody where it goes from one color, one instrument color to the other. This is one, actually, to be honest, one of my favorite passages in the minuet and probably in the entire symphony.
Yeah, well, and I think it's interesting that, as we're going to hear this in just a second, but another one of the questions that we just received from our clarinet player, Doris. Hi, Doris. She specifically wanted to know your thoughts on why do you think Beethoven brought this back, even though it was kind of an outdated style. But hearing what you just described, it kind of fits with the theme of everything else in this symphony, is that it's kind of, the joke here is that it's pretending to be an outdated style, but in fact, there's really, really modern ideas hiding at every corner of this symphony.
That was maybe the naughty Beethoven.
He was a very naughty boy. It's true.
This is a very interesting question, but I cannot answer this question. I mean, there might be various reasons why he brought back it. I think personally, it's maybe because of it's more a nostalgic invocation. I think, yeah, and maybe it's a kind of tribute to his old teacher, to Haydn, to go back to the old classical minuet. But at the other hand, it's already almost a sort of pseudo scherzo. So it's because of the tempo, again, because of the fast tempo. It's a pseudo scherzo. It's a little bit between, and this is maybe the joke. That he's trying to add some very modern ideas, like, as I told you before, like the introduction starting with 5 orchestral hits. This has nothing to do with a minuet and probably nothing with a scherzo. It's just a musical statement. It's a completely new idea within an old frame. So I think it's part of the musical joke, but who knows? I don't know the real truth. I only can, knowing a little bit the character of Beethoven, by studying his music, by reading books. By the way, I just want to show you something. 1 second. There are many books written on the life of Beethoven, but this is probably one of the best books ever written. It's written by a musicologist and a conductor. His name is Jan Kuyers. He is from Belgium, but he studied in Vienna. He has his own orchestra, and he wrote a book about Beethoven. You know that the grandparents of Beethoven, they were born in Flanders. So Beethoven he's not a Flemish composer, but he's a German composer born in Bonn. But there is a small place called Bettenhoven, and in those days when you were born in a particular place in Europe, in Belgium, in Flanders, very often you received your family name from the name of the village you were born in. So Bettenhoven, which is the original name from Beethoven. So Ludwig van Beethoven means that Ludwig from Bettenhoven. So Ludwig, who was born or whose grandparents were born in Bettenhoven. And this place still exists. But this is not the story I wanted to tell you. This is really an amazing book. And this is not so much about the repertoire or about the analysis of the works, but this is a biography. And it's an amazing book. A lot of new things we discover in this. So this is for all the Beethoven lovers. This is the Bible, absolutely the Bible. I will check it out if it's translated already in English, but it's amazing. But I was reading in this book about this question before it came from Doris, and Doris always has interesting questions, but I couldn't find it. So there is no document, as far as I discovered, a document or a letter or a conversation between Beethoven and a third person that refers to the idea why he was using a minuet. We can only guess.
Yeah. Well, let's take a listen to the trio and see if we can hear some of that fun instrumental color you were talking about with the Klangfarben melody.
Yes, and we might hear Doris on the clarinet.
It's true. We might hear Doris on the clarinet. I suspect we will.
Yeah.
It is really lovely. Clarinet playing, extraordinary. Presuming it is Doris. This is the recording that we're using here is a little bits of the archive from the chamber orchestra, and this is a 2009 performance with the former music director Ignat Solzhenitsyn. So very much many of our players are represented here doing an incredible job.
And now we arrive at the fourth movement, which is pur sang Beethoven, 100% Ludwig. Incredible piece, incredible. The coda is a piece in itself. I mean, it's really great. Two things that are surprising me and that are striking events actually. First of all, it's the extremely fast tempo. And if we listen to a lot of recordings, especially the older ones, like the Furtwängler and the Celibidache and the Pierre Monteux and even Bernstein, they all take slow tempi. But here, Beethoven's tempo mark is 84 for a bar, which is extremely fast. And I think the reason why I just mentioned Karajan and Furtwängler, why they don't play it in a fast tempo, is because they performed this music with too many musicians. I think this music should be performed as it was performed originally with 32 musicians, 32-ish musicians, 8 woodwinds, 4 brass, timpani, 6 first violins, 5 second violins, 4 violas, 3 cello, and 2 double basses. With such a small group, you can play very crispy, transparent, fast, and brilliant. If you double or triple the number of musicians, that was very often done by Karajan recordings. They doubled all the woodwinds. You had four oboes, you had four bassoons, you had four trumpets, you had four horns, and you had maybe 16 first violins. So you cannot read the speeds with so many musicians. So you lose tempo. This is why I like performances very much by, first of all, our own orchestra is a great orchestra. The transparency, the sound quality, the spirit they bring to the music, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's because of the quality of each individual, but also because of the size of the orchestra and the acoustic environment we are playing in. But this is why I like very much performances like, for example, by Nicolas Harnoncourt or Frans Bruggen, is a great Dutch conductor who led the orchestra of the 18th century, but also Jos van Immerzeel with his group Anima Eterna. These are really great performances in all terms. But these are the last three I mentioned, are the only three recordings I know of that are playing this music in the original, almost the original tempo. And the second event that is surprising, oh my God, all of a sudden in the F major environment, we hear C sharp, which is like the wrong note coming from a wrong symphony. Now we have two ways for interpretation: or it's a musical joke, or it's a cry from pain, a scream to have attention. And when I conduct this piece and when I hear this music, I always think of the scream, the painting by Edvard Munch. Maybe you know the painting where you see an open mouth of a person screaming, but it's like a silent cry for, because of pain, a call for attention. It's a scream for attention. It's a search for happiness. So for me, this is drama. This is absolutely drama. Maybe we should have a listen to it.
Yeah, so I think the recording we have here is going to start us up just a little bit into the coda, I think, just before we get another example of this great C sharp and the shocking modulation that comes with it, and then it's going to carry us through right to the end of the symphony, and then we can talk about some of our wilder things that happen in here. In particular, I would point out that I am most impressed by the way he gets out of the modulation he does. Yeah. I mean, he says, here's a C sharp and F major, and then he says, why don't we just go up a half step? And as a composer, how do you solve that?
Exactly.
But of course, he doesn't care, and he just...
It sounds like a wrong note. Sounds like a wrong note in the F major environment.
It's shocking and wonderful, and we're going to enjoy it. Oh yeah, that C
Now,
sharp just ugh.
amazing, but still more to come. I think the conclusion of his entire life so far, written down in Symphony Number 7, but in Number 8, comes together in the coda of the fourth movement, which is a piece of music in itself. It's a masterpiece in itself, and there all the moods and all the tones come together. It's the conclusion of it's the anger, it's the fear, it's the happiness, it's the humor, it's the comedy, and the tragedy. It's never ending. It's like the coda. It's a huge coda. It's never ending. It's pure Beethoven, full of unexpected sound effects. He's experimenting again with modulations, with dynamics, with instrumentation. Very modern, very modern. For me, it's one of the most modern parts in all his symphony. Modern parts in terms of composition style and looking for new sounds, new inventions of orchestrations. It's again, Beethoven here leaves us breathless. I have nothing more to say. Maybe we should listen to part of the coda.
I wish we had. I wish we had more things to do. Wouldn't it be great if we just actually had the whole performance? To one little point I think I could bring up is that we do have. I loved there were some really fun examples of the Klangfarben melody that you were talking about. Particularly, I suppose maybe that would count as a Klangfarben. It wasn't much of a melody, but this idea that he kept throwing from the woodwinds down to the lowest voices, this octave change. It was like he turned just going to a piano going ba 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 ba, and he turns that into a whole idea that's engaging and wonderful just by taking the same thing and bouncing them. You can almost feel the physical sensation
Yeah.
of being taken down a valley and back up the mountaintop.
When I conduct this piece, I feel like I'm in the middle of an opera with a lot of voices singing at the same moment, as you say, Q&As coming from the lower voices to the upper voices. Then there was a lot of inner conversations going on. There was genius counterpoint going on. I feel like I'm in the middle of the final act of an opera where all the sentiments are coming together. I have no words. I mean, I'm breathless when I hear this music, when you conduct it, when you play it, and when you understand what's going on musically, when you understand in which period of his life he's writing it. Therefore, I think it's always interesting as a performer, as a conductor, as a listener, everybody who loves music, that we try to understand in which period of the composer's life he wrote a certain piece of music. This is so important. Without knowing this background that we've been discussing for the last half an hour, we cannot. It's not about judging, but we cannot enjoy this music enough. So we always should try to go into the brain of the composer and why he's writing this. And the second thing I always try to do, and this is something very personal, I try to listen and conduct this music as I hear it for the very first time, ignoring all the other music I know, ignoring Stravinsky, ignoring Shostakovich, which is very difficult. But in those days, this was so modern. He was such a modern composer, ahead of his time, ages ahead of his time. No one was doing what he was doing. And talking about the dynamics and about anger and the fear, personally, I think it has to do with the problems he had with the hearing. If Beethoven would have had a happy life with a happy love and with a perfect hearing, probably he would not have left the music behind that he did. It's because of all those controversial inner wars he had to fight that he became who he was. And I think in the case of Beethoven, it's the direct translation of the emotions he felt inside. And for me, it's somebody who's always crying, not for attention in terms of me, but in terms of please listen to my inner voice. I want to tell you something. I want to communicate something. Because Beethoven was always also somebody who was interested in what was going on. I mean, in the same period he met Schiller. This was probably one of the most important meetings in his personal life, because this meeting was not only interesting because of their later collaboration, but Schiller was one of the greatest writers and philosophers in these days. So the fact that two geniuses met each other and shared ideas and emotions as we do today. If I look at my own little small life, if I look back, I just turned 60. If I look back to the moments that changed my life, it's not the applause. It's not the length of the applause. It's not the article in the newspaper, but it's sometimes a conversation you have. I remember a conversation I had with the father of Liz Kapdarabek, who is our acting principal second violin player. And her father used to be a trumpet player in the Philadelphia Orchestra. And once I was invited at Liz's house, where I had a very, very long conversation with her father. And it made such a huge impression on me. I mean, so sometimes you can have a conversation with somebody who is talking about the same subject, about the same composer, about the same piece of music, but from a complete different angle, that you can learn so much from each other. So I think it's important we perform music, but also that we communicate. Musicians between themselves, with the conductor, with the audience. I really love hearing what people in the audience, probably all music lovers, but probably people that don't read the score or don't know about musicologist things, but people that love music and the sounds that come into their ear, go into their heart, into their brain, and sometimes their reactions to what they hear, it's so pure and so innovative. Sometimes they give me food for thought. Sometimes they give me energy. Sometimes they inspire me. Sometimes. But nothing is more boring than taking a score and say, oh, this and this and this was not together. And I mean, this is technical stuff. But as Mahler said, the music is really behind the notes. This is only a notation. This is only a way to communicate. It's only a way of communicating. It's a notation system. But the real music and the real spirit and the real happiness and joy and fear and whatever, all sentiments that a composer as a human being can have, is behind the notes. And it's our task as performers, as musicians, performing musicians on stage, as conductors, to try to detect the soul of the composer and try to come as close as possible to the original spirit where everything started. And this is our task. And if we can communicate this with the public, then we have magic. And this is why arts are so important. It's more important than anything else. When I look at my country and I look at the news, everybody is talking about economy. We should start the economy again, and economy and the stock market and the banks and the health system. This is all very important. Without this, we cannot live. But without culture, those people cannot live. So it's very important that we keep supporting the people that spend a lifetime in playing an instrument on a top level. We should give them all the possibilities they deserve to do what they have to do, is using their talent in order to recreate this music and many more music written by wonderful composers. Because music is food for brain and soul. That being said, let's listen to the coda of the Fourth Symphony by one of the greatest composers ever, Ludwig van Beethoven.
Which one? Didn't we just listen to the coda? We may not have another clip. I might have burst your beautiful speech. Well, anyway, with that, we'll post a link down in the comments. Thank you so much.
It's 11 o'clock, so we talked for about 1 hour.
We talked for an hour. Even if we had more clips, I don't think we're ready for them. I think we're at a good spot to wrap this up. And we've gone through all 4 movements of this incredible symphony. I think we've learned a lot. We've emoted together. We've got a lovely little community going in the comments here. And I think this is just the first of several virtual things that the Chamber Orchestra is going to bring for us. And we look forward to getting together again to continue to explore music and beer and Belgium and Philadelphia and everything in between. So
don't forget, from time to time, have a good gin with alcohol, without alcohol, or in your case, with alcohol.
Whatever makes you truly happy.
Cheers.
Thank
you so much, Joshua. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here. And remember, you can donate to the Chamber Orchestra on our website. Thank you, and have a good Sunday evening.
Bye.